So in this presentation, I would be comparing a poem written in 1963 by famed Nigerian writer Wo Soyinka called Telephone Conversation to a movie directed by Stephen Hopkins and released in 2016 called Race. In both of these two selected pieces, they both tackle the same issue, which is that of racism. I will be analyzing each of these pieces and comparing them side by side. Telephone Conversation is a poem about a black man's conversation with a white landlord about renting an apartment, and the conversation that goes on between the two of them can be described by today's standard as very racist. In the poem, everything appears to be going well until the buyer warns her that he is African or black. Then the landlady pauses for a bit and asks him how dark. I find her question very interesting, as it suggests that there are different forms of racist treatment towards black people depending on their complexity of darkness. Maybe if he was lighter skinned, it was more tolerable for the white landlord as opposed to him being darker skinned. In the poem, it is also mentioned that the landlady lived off premises away from the apartment complex. What this could represent is that, as a white person, the lady lives somewhere far off which is more luxurious, while the lower class people, or in this case, the black renter, live in a less luxurious area for those not privileged enough like the landlady. And the landlady also asked him to represent himself as plain or milk chocolate, representing how the landlady does not see the man as equal living creature, thus asking him to compare himself to some chocolate. It is also ironic that chocolate is a dessert enjoyed by many white folks, which originated in Africa with cocoa seeds. So by looking into this, she isn't even asking the man to compare himself to something of a white origin, but something that is of the same origin from Africa as him. So after being asked about his skin tone, he replied, black West African sepia. Sepia is a color that when taken a photograph of, it will turn the color into a brownish gray color, no matter what skin tone the person is in the photograph. So this implies that he does not see color and he is trying to get an influence over the landlady to make her not see color too. But he added West African in front of sepia to remind the landlady that he still knows that he is black and that he is proud of it. And at the end of the poem, he told the landlady to come see his ears for herself, after he had described most of his body parts to her. I find this interesting in that the renter may be trying to tell the landlady not to judge someone until you see them in person, and to think of your opinion of someone by yourself and not what you may hear from other people, hence ears. Now, onto the movie Race. It is a film based on real life about African American athlete Jesse Owens, who broke records and won 4 gold medals during the 1936 Olympics set in Nazi rule Germany. This movie is set in the 1930s in Ohio, USA and Berlin, Germany. It shows the journey of Jesse Owens from being a college athlete to representing the USA in an Olympic. Not only does he have to endure the pains of what it takes to become an athlete, but also being black in a predominantly white biased world. He also went to compete in Germany, which at that time the Nazi Party was in full power, a party which viewed everyone who was not the same race as them as lower beings. So this film showcased the power relation between black people and white people, very predominantly in a particular scene. In the ending scene, Jesse Owens was invited to dine in a fancy hotel to be celebrated as an Olympic gold medalist. However, when he got to the front entrance of the hotel, the doorman informed him that he would have to enter through the back door as he was black, despite the doorman knowing Jesse was the guest of honor invited to that hotel, as it was the hotel policy that only whites may enter through the front door. This shows that no matter how rich, famous, or what honor he or she may have brought to the country, the white society still did not give the same amount of respect towards the black citizens, and that they are just tools for the whites to just manipulate and use for their own gain. This also shows that race will always overshadow your identity. It does not matter if you are good, as as good as a white person or better, your race was still used to judge you as a whole. This film also showcases and represents white supremacy or absolute rule, represented by the Nazi rule in the film. There is one scene which represented this. Jesse Owens' coach Larry Cinder went out to the streets of Germany to buy Jesse a new pair of track shoes. Along the way, he saw members of the Gestapo, a branch of secret German police, rounding up some people, which possibly are Jewish, into a truck. He himself was almost taken away too until he shows his paperwork to the police that he was a foreign US citizen. So now that I have talked about the two selected pieces, I would talk about how I'll be comparing them in my final essay. The first theme I would be comparing it about is racism, where we can see that in both pieces, the black character both experience form of racism. So I will be discussing how similar it is or how different it is to one another. The second theme of my content would be about white supremacy and power relations. In both pieces, we can see that the black characters are under the white characters' influence and that they have no power over them, like how in the poem, the black renter had to endure the racist question asked, and how in the film, Jesse Owens had to endure racist chants shouted at him during competition held in the USA. For the last theme, I would be talking about how race represents your identity, like how I mentioned Jesse Owens will always still be a black man in the eyes of the whites, and how the black apartment renter has a decent enough job to be able to rent an apartment but is still looked down upon just for being black. And my essay outline will be as following. Introduction of my essay, followed by part 1, which is introduction to the selected pieces, and then the comparison and analyzing of them. And then lastly, I'll be writing the conclusion. And that is all. Thank you.